I got another Yu Yu Hakusho villain today that I'm talking about is the life of Shinobu Sensui. Shinobu Sensui. Not somebody else that you're thinking of, people. This is Yu Yu Hakusho. This is a guy, a man who is complex or made himself that way, or this guy's doing stuff. So let's start from the beginning. So Shinobu was a boy who could see apparitions from a young age, and they always came after him, because they knew that the boy knew that they were there, and he would kill these things. He had the ability to kill them and stuff. So by the time he was in middle school, you know, he became the spirit detective. And this was before Yusuke, right? He's basically Yusuke's predecessor, and he succeeded a girl named um, Kuroka. She left it because she had a family and stuff. And he was old enough to take up the job of spirit detective. So that's what he did. And during that time, he killed a lot of demons, and he was very, very efficient at his job because he's always been hunted by these demons growing up. And he never once asked any questions. He just did what he was told. These demons are evil. Kill them. Dispose of them. These yokais ain't allowed to be here. These apparitions are evil. Kill them. And he did that for a while. Um, and one day he met a demon too, named Tsuki. And Tsuki was please don't kill me. Please. I have a you know TV show I plan on finish watching. At least let me watch the end of that show before you kill me. And Sensui was I never met a demon in all my years of that would just want to sit back and eat popcorn and watch a fucking sitcom or TV show. No different than us humans. That's when he started thinking a bit. You know, maybe like us humans, these creatures we call demons and apparitions and other things, there's good ones and bad ones. you know he started thinking a little bit like that, but he was still a spirit detective and other things. He was like, Itsuki's all right. He ain't trying to kill me. you know I guess I can allow him to live for now. He got a mission to go infiltrate a compound. This was a compound of the the Black Club. And these people, like I said in the other video, they like to see demons kill each other. And not just that, they like to also, with their money, have torture devices and watch, demons be, ripped apart and other things. Um, he witnessed these people torturing demons, like humans that he sworn to protect. Torturing these demons. You know, he was always told that demons are the ones who fuck with humans and other things, and they're the ones causing harm to everybody. They eat humans. They do this to humans. They influence humans. They poison humans and shit like that. But then he was witnessing the opposite. You know, these people were spending their money on seeing demons be ripped apart. Killing one another and other things. And not just that, he had witnessed the chapter black tapes. It shows all the atrocities that humans commit on one another. Everything you can think of: war, violence of all sorts. Torture, slavery, all that shit. He was witnessing all of it, and all of that kind of it reshaped his thoughts and shit about what was going on. He's like, we humans are no different than these demons that we, you know, say are bad and evil and do this and that. And we need to be eradicated. You know, he just basically left that job. Like he didn't like he just quit being the spirited death of it altogether. And he like disappeared for a while. But then after, Yusuke defeated, Toguro in the Dark Tournament, Sensui found his brother, the older Toguro brother. He was still alive. Um, that guy, he had the ability to like switch his organs around, move them around different parts of his body. So not all of his like, internal organs, the major ones that you need to fucking survive, were like smashed. So he was still alive. Toguro put him in a tank, and he was alive still. The goal for Sensui at this point was to open the demon gate and basically allow Armageddon to happen. Allow all these, demons to come through and like lay waste to, the human world. Kill everybody until there's nothing left but piss and shit. And that was his, goal. He had, different people on his side. So Itsuki, that demon that he basically made his friend, was opening the portal. So Itsuki was kind of a psychic too. He's a psychic kind of demon. So he was able to be a spirit medium to allow like the portal to demon world to open up more and more and more. What Since we also needed not was it wasn't just that, he also needed the portal to open up to a certain degree so demons can come through, right? um but like there was still a Kakai barrier net, and that net restricted A class apparitions and S class apparitions from getting through and coming through to human world, because spirit world, Koenma and his father, King Yama, um feared that if one of the S class demons got through, then humanity would be destroyed. Um, so they put up that barrier and shit, right? So that happened, and he has 7 people. He has Doctor, Gourmet, Game Master, Seaman, Sniper. Damn, I'm trying to remember the other ones. I think Psychic, and then he was Black Angel, the leader of all of them. These people, was Sensui's group of people that he like, came, he showed them a little bit of the tape and convinced them that, hey man, we are like people who need to be like destroyed. We should just let demons run, through this world and destroy everything. As we don't deserve to live. I showed you, the worst shit that we've done to each other as human beings. You can't tell me that, we don't deserve to like, perish and other things. And he was able to like basically, trick these people into like following his plan and shit. And they were like, yes, we'll make this shit happen real quick. We'll open this portal, help you open this portal to demon world, and then everybody will, basically die. Um, and that's what he did. You know, he had that plan, right? Koenma, told Yusuke, and they were on, his trail. Um, uh, there were other people in, you know, that city that obtained powers, um, supernatural gifts because of the thickening of demon energy and human world. Hey, excuse me, sir, you got a couple dollars? Um, okay, my bad. But that, right? He, he, um, there was other people that weren't with him that were getting these powers and shit. And he was like, um, Yusuke had that guy with him. He could read minds and shit, and he was like, find out where Shinobu's at. This guy named Shinobu Sensei. He's trying to like fuck around and destroy the world. He'll have thoughts like that. That's how you hone in on him. Basically, he'll have like negative thoughts about, we're gonna destroy the world. People need to die and shit like that. And he was able to hone in on him, and he was in the crowd somewhere. However, he had the sniper like from a distance, like I don't know, 5 football fields away. He shot an eraser at the guy's head, and he was able to get away from them. But then he showed up later, after Kuwabara had awakened his powers because Seaman was able to draw Kuwabara's powers out of him. Um, After the Dark Tournament, Kuwabara's powers were like gone for a little bit. Then he got his powers back, but when they came back, he was like able to cut through dimensions, and that's what was needed to cut through the Kakai barrier net. So Sensui went to go find Kuwabara. They knew this, and Yusuke was like, "Okay, Kuwabara, you stay the fuck back, and I'll fight this guy." He did that. He was fighting Sensui for a little bit. Koma was like, Sensui used to be spirit detective before you and other things, but guess what? Um, you are less experienced than him. He's actually a fucking problem. I can only imagine how much stronger he's gotten over the years and shit. And he used Rashuken or whatever it's called. I'm trying to remember. Rashuken or Rikuken. He's able to basically kick energy out, like a soccer ball almost, similar to the spirit gun, but not quite. And then he likes to kick a lot, and he punches too. Um, he knows martial arts, karate type shit. Um, Kempo, I think. But he was, doing that shit right, and he was, fucking Yusuke up. Then he got away. Um, with Kuwabara, because I mean, the game master, out and out with that. And he's like, all right, let's get in the truck and get this boy to the net, kind of net. We're underground and other shit. They won't be able to find us. Um, got there and he he was rewatching Chapter Black to like basically make sure he goes through with what he's doing. He's like, okay, yes, we do deserve to die, because this is all the shit that humanity's done to itself. All the fucked up shit, humans have done to, demons and us and each other and, anything you could possibly think of, the horrible shit, demons being, ripped apart and other things too, we deserve to, perish as a species. But, you know, Yusuke and Kurama and Hiei got there and they were like, we're getting Kuwabara back. He sick Elder Tagoro on Kurama and Kurama defeated him. Then, Itsuki ate the group, everybody except Yusuke, and then Yusuke was fighting against, Sensui. Sensui, enlightened Yusuke. He was like, you have strength, speed, and, you might even be durable than me, but you don't have the experience, and you don't have the, like, you ain't smart enough either. And you don't have the power that I have within me. You're gonna lose this fight, basically. And Yusuke was like, I never lose. I have to like figure this shit out somehow. And like he was having problems. Like, Sensui was predicting his moves. Like Yusuke's predictable boy. He's gonna attack. He's gonna use his fucking hands. He's gonna brawl. And he was able to like dodge Yusuke's attacks and shit. So Yusuke had to get creative and like restrict his fucking hands and like for a second and punch him when he could. Even that wasn't enough. Ryuken in different forms, basically able to shoot that shit out like a shotgun, like almost like Yusuke's spirit shotgun, but like with kicks. They kept coming at Yusuke and he got hit by like a whole bunch of them. He was like not doing too well during that fight. Um, then he had like you learned that he had 7 personalities within him, basically so he could cope with like all the like shit he saw as a spirit detective, as a guy who watched Chapter Black and other things, there was a part of him that was like, maybe we shouldn't, kill the humans and we should just give up on this venture. No, maybe we should do this. Do I even love myself for this? Or, then there was a part of him that was like, man, we should just kill them all. We should just, fuck shit up. He had like seven different personalities. I don't remember, what their names were or anything like that specifically, but these personalities, you know, helped him cope with all of his past and other things. He, you know, he took his shirt off in the battle, and he was like, I gave myself these scars. I didn't get these scars from fighting no demons or people. They couldn't do that shit to me. I did this to myself. you know, and he had like all kinds of like lashes on his back, like he had whipped himself, you know, for like all the shit he's done to like demons. I don't know. Guy was like all ate up. Like I said, some personalities on the inside. And he was like, okay, you know, these personalities came out. One of them was like, I think his name was Johnny. He had a gun and he like shot Yusuke and he was fighting him. He wasn't the smartest personality, basically a guy that just liked to fuck shit up. He had the like about the same amount of intelligence as Yusuke and other things. Violent guy, but likes to like gun shit down. Um, Koema gets there and he's like, "Yo, Shinobu, what the fuck's going on? You know, Shinobu, I need to talk to you." And he's like, "Okay, switch over real quick." And he was like, "Okay." He switched over, and then he started to use the sacred energy. He told Yusuke, even your master Genkai hasn't mastered this type of shit because it takes 70 years to master, right? But he had seven personalities within himself, so he trained each personality, trained 10 years, in different ways, so he could master the sacred energy at his age, and he had that, right? And with that energy, he was shaking the world. Like the world was shaking and shit, just off his aura being released. And Koema was like, "Oh fuck, we have to like seal him away with Mafoken." The pacifier that was in his mouth had been, in his mouth for like thousands of years or something like that. I don't know how old Koema is, but he's old, older than people think. And he, used the Mafoken, but the Mafoken broke. He broke loose of it. When he broke loose of it, um, Yusuke had like no chance after that. Um, he couldn't do anything. Like it was truly like a man fighting a child, as it is. Sensui's an older guy, and Yusuke's a child, and it showed there that that fight wasn't gonna be easy for Yusuke, and he actually died too. So then when he died, Sensui was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Demon World. His friends are gonna come try to like kill me now. And they did. They tried to, go into, spirit world. He was able to get through the Kakai barrier himself, like easily, because he is a human with, S class levels of, spirit energy or sacred energy in this case. And he got down to demon world, and these demons were like, "What the fuck? Like this guy is like on par with like some fucking powerful demons. Like I don't even know what the fuck that is. It's not demon energy. This guy is like doing like it's almost as if he's a god and shit. After like these demons got away and shit. Kurama, Hiei, and Kuwabara were there in Demon World fighting against him. They all three jumped in with like their most powerful abilities. Yoko Kurama form. You know, Black Flame. From Hiei, and then the Dimension Sword from Kuwabara. All three of them tried to jump him, and he still was like not losing that fight against those guys. Um, then Yusuke came back. See, he had the genes of Mazaku, Toshin Raizen's DNA, the most powerful demon from Demon World. He had his blood in his veins, so he was able to come back. You know, the thing about a demon's heartbeat is like it's not a heartbeat. It's like very, it's not there. It's not apparent. That's the way that works. And he's like, my ticker still ain't ticking once he found, Shinobu, and he was like, okay, I guess you are like, some kind of monster, you know. Let's like end this fight between, the spirit detective of now versus the spirit detective of old, which was him, Shinobu Sensui, and he was like, they fought against one another in Demon World, and they were on par with each other at that point. They were like basically equal. Shinobu still kind of had a little bit of an edge, but not much, not much. Yusuke still could have won that himself. Um, but then a random thing happened. Ryzen took over Yusuke's body, and Sensu is like, I get to meet the most powerful demon that people don't even get to see. I'm witnessing, greatness right now. I'll gladly take this demon on in a fight. I'm worthy of it. I've claimed many demons' lives in my lifetime. He's like, you don't want to fuck with me, because I'm like the most powerful one. And he was like, he basically like, oh my god, basically what happened to Yusuke, and when they like first fought each other happened to Sensui. So he was getting thrown around like a rag dog. This shit was fucking, an ass whooping for sure. And he was like, you kind of bit off more than you could chew with this one. You shouldn't have said shit like that. And he shot him with the demon gun, and that basically ended him. You know, Yusuke was like, "Hold on, don't die. I want to make sure I win against you." Shinobu was like, "No, no, it might not have been you, but it was you, a demon form of you, who defeated me. You know, I get to die here in Demon World. You know, the place where I like, I've killed many demons in my lifetime, so it's right that I like die here and other things. I always, growing up, I didn't know that the demons I was going after had a side of their story that I didn't know about, until I started doing this. But I did this to an extreme degree. I got like the world involved in other stuff. My death is, foolish. I was gonna die anyway, so I had like no, time left. I was just basically, he was basically looking for somebody to like, get him right. You know, he was gonna die anyways. He wanted to like go out a certain way. You know, he had like head problems. Like I said, he couldn't cope with the fact that he was told that demons are bad, absolute evil. But then turns out some demons are not. They ain't trying to like hunt humans really. They're just trying to survive the witch hunt. That is, humans attacking demons. They're just trying to live their lives no different than human beings and shit. And, he, you know, took shit to an extreme because of, his mindset, you know. But that was the life of Shinobu Sensui. He's, he was a powerful guy, and, but Yusuke, he had, help. Yusuke still would have won the fight if you ask me. But, um, yeah, he was a guy kind of like the girl, he was not, the worst guy at first, but then, things led to one thing, and he became very extreme in like what he wanted to do, and he got other people involved, like, the world must end because of, we are all human beings. We, see things this way, but that's not the reality. We do shit to each other too. You know, we fuck each other up. We, kill each other. We do this, we abuse one another, and then we do that to demons, and then demons do it to us. And like, that guy was torn up, all ate up. But that's Shinobu Sensui from Yu Yu Hakusho. Season 3, watch that, alright? But stay cool, corner on the corner.